Everyone, welcome back to the RCA channel. We have yet another fit video. These seem to be going well at the moment, where they're getting big views. I think we're up to 40,000 as of filming on the last one. So they seem to be popular. So hope you guys like these. Give them a like, thumbs up, subscribe. You know all the jazz. To my right, another enormous person. We've got three in a row here. Really tall guys. This I didn't plan this. This is just how it came out. This is Eamon. He's come up from Sydney, and you've got a persistent problem with your buttocks.
I do. Just been having some right-sided sort of sit bone discomfort, you know, just recurring saddle sore, stuff like that. It sucks, it's annoying, it sort of stops your riding.
There's nothing worse.
Exactly.
And you ride recreationally now, but you used to race a little bit?
Yep. So probably sort of 10 to sort of 12 years ago, did a fair bit of racing, you know, some NRS stuff, Tour of Bright, stuff like that. That's how I got a collarbone break as well. Exactly. Yep. So yeah, haven't really done much like that for a long time, but just enjoying riding and getting fit and stuff like that.
So I've actually just found out that Eamon and I probably raced in the same Tour of Brights. Probably, you were probably A grade, I was probably B or C, but we won't talk about that. So that's kind of cool back in the day. Now he's been to see Steve Hogg a long time ago, 12, 15 years ago. All that's been lost in the wind now. So we're going to start from scratch. We have no idea what the causal mechanism of this saddle sore that he's had might be. All we know is it's been really, really, really persistent for a long time. This predates, you know, this is 10 plus years of this. And it does sometimes limit your riding and your intensity and your duration. So yeah, we've got to get rid of it one way or another. Hopefully there's an interesting mechanism behind this, which we can show people. Hopefully it's not something really simple. See how we go.
Excellent.
Okay, just looking here at Eamon's posture, there's a couple of interesting things, and these will be very, very hard to see on the footage. You may be able to see through his lower thoracic spine here that the musculature on the right side of his spine stands out a lot more. It's a lot larger on this side than it is on the left. His shoulders are a little bit asymmetrical. His pelvis is actually fairly level. And this will definitely not show up on the video, but his right glute, his glute max, is a little bit bigger than his left one. And just digging my fingers in here through the top edge of his glute max, the one on the right is really, really locked up. There's a big trigger point there, which is making Eamon wince when I press on it. The one on the left, can you feel the difference, mate?
Yep.
Yeah, this one is much smaller. The little striation in the top of the muscle is much smaller. This one, triple the size and much, much, much tighter. So his right glute is larger than his left, but you can clearly see if we come down here to his calves, his left medial head of his calf is substantially larger than his right medial head of his calf. So his two calves are asymmetrical, so are his glutes. So this is what I like to call a crossover sign. He's got a posterior chain muscle on this side, which is bigger, and another one on the opposite side, which is bigger. Now this usually implies asymmetrical load on the pedals, and this could be some bit of a clue as to what's happening on the bike. Apart from his saddle sore, Eamon does get right-sided lower back and upper glute and sacroiliac joint sort of just discomfort mixed in here. So this will be related. This trigger point that's in his glute max here is not a coincidence. So let's have a look at his quads and see if there's much discrepancy there. A little bit. So his VMO on the right, his medial quad, is noticeably bigger than the one on the left. The lateral quad is slightly larger on the left than the right. So this is another example of what you'd call like a crossover sign. It's evidence of asymmetrical load. The medial quad being bigger on the right and the lateral quad being bigger on the left. It doesn't tell us anything about what's causing the problem. It just tells us that there is a fair bit of asymmetry. All right, let's look at his feet. Mate, those are a feet that only a mother could love. Look at them. They are like clown feet. Look, what size are they?
13, so US, or 47
wow.
European. Yep.
Huge long foot. The first three toes all being the same length. Very, very rare. It's quite a narrow, long foot too. Very tricky to fit a shoe for that one. Do you always turn this foot out like that?
Yeah, seem to. I haven't only realised it in the last sort of couple of years, but yeah, it seems to be something that it's me at the moment. Yep.
Because just at rest like that, it doesn't tell us much. But if you walk with that foot turned out substantially relative to the other one, that will be a clue as to what.
I'm not aware that I will not if I do that. I don't know. But.
Well, we'll find out soon. Okay, bend your legs up towards you. That's it. Knees together. Awesome. Bum up off the ground for me, Eamon, and then back down again. Try and relax. Nothing. If anything, your right leg might be a couple of millimeters shorter than your left, but there's basically no substantial discrepancy in there. All right, try and relax. Good. 40 degrees, 40 degrees, good rotation, average hammies, sweet, sweet, sweet. Now this is what we're really interested in, is that left foot that turns out, is that being driven by an asymmetrical pair of hips? So try and relax, without a doubt. So this is a great example here of an asymmetrical pair of hip joints. So Eamon's right hip has got, I don't know, 35, 40 degrees, maybe 45 if we're really lucky, of external rotation. The internal rotation is about 30, 35 degrees, maybe 40, something like that. If we look at his other leg, this hip joint here has got substantially more external rotation. It's got almost double. It's got about 70 degrees or so when the hip is flexed up at 90 degrees like this. If we look at his internal rotation though, I bet you it doesn't have much. Let your leg go floppy, Eamon. It's got bugger all. So it's got like 5 degrees of internal rotation. So both of his hip joints have got similar amounts of overall range available, being about 80 degrees or so, but the range of motion is asymmetrically located. So the best way to imagine this is, imagine if you've got your 2 hip joints located in your pelvis. They're basically like cups like this, right? Yep. If the 2 hip joints are sitting in plane with each other in every direction, and the 2 joints are symmetrical and everything else is symmetrical, they should have even amounts of range of motion into internal and external rotation. There's lots of potential causes of why they would be asymmetrical, like muscle tightness and torsions in your pelvis and all sorts of things. But one of the possibilities is that the 2 sockets are orientated on different 3-dimensional angles. So in this case, it would be that your left hip would have more what we call retroversion, which is that the left hip would be turned back in the pelvis. Yep. Another way of imagining it is that the right one is turned forward relative to the left. It doesn't really matter, but they are different. So you would call this like a different retroversion or a different anteversion angle. Now this can come literally just from the 2 sockets not sitting symmetrically in the pelvis. Another possibility is that Eamon does have a substantial posterior torsion on his left ilium. So fancy way of saying that his pelvis might be twisted. We're going to find out if that is the case now. So you get to relax, man. Just put your chin on your hands. Yep. So your pelvis doesn't feel twisted to me, but the assessment tools to determine whether the 2 halves of the pelvis are turned relative to each other are notoriously inaccurate. So we'll always do this test and see what happens. So what we're going to do here is we're going to wind his left SIJ up into forward nutation. Now this is like a manipulation type technique if you go really hard on it. We're just going to use it as a bit of a stretch. It will also stretch his left hip flexor at the same time. So Eamon, all you've got to do is relax. Just let your leg go floppy. Tell me if I'm hurting you. It shouldn't, well, try not to tense up. Yeah. It shouldn't hurt. It should just feel like a fair bit of pressure. So let it go really relaxed. That's it. And normally I would use the palm of my left hand here on the back of your superior posterior iliac spine, but my wrist is full of arthritis from an old fracture. So I've had to basically do this with a fist for the last 10 years. So all we're doing here is winding his ilium into forward rotation. You only need about 10 seconds if you use a fair bit of force. Flip onto your back again, mate. Yep. And what we want to see here is whether or not the hip joint's range of motion changes. This is sort of blurring the lines between physiotherapy and bike fitting, Eamon, but here we are. 65 degrees, it's slightly less, and we should see more internal rotation here. And there isn't. So this tells us that your pelvis is not torsioned. Okay. You do actually probably have 2 different retroversion angles on your acetabulums. So this either means that the necks of your 2 femurs sit on different angles, or the actual sockets sit on different angles inside the pelvis. There's a clue here, mate.
Okay, cool.
What this means is that when we watch you walk in a minute, we are likely to see the left foot turning out because Eamon's natural his natural plane of motion that his left hip will operate in is very likely to be externally rotated relative to the right one. The hip tends to like swinging through range of motion somewhere in the middle of that available range that we saw. And if the left one is retroverted right out like this, it'll turn out relative to the right one. So we'll have a look at you walk now, and if that left foot is rotated externally, there could be a clue here as to how this problem is occurring. Because what this will do is if you've got two symmetrically located feet from the midline of the bike and one of them is sitting like this, you can imagine what that's going to do to your symmetry on the bike. Yeah, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. So let's have a look at your walk, man. I'd like to take a brief moment out from this video to thank our channel sponsor, Prungo.
Who are Prungo, Neil?
Prungo are the developers of the FluxGo, a targeted red light therapy device aimed at reducing inflammation and promoting recovery.
Okay, and have you been using it?
I have indeed. For the last 12 months, I've been using this device fairly religiously on a number of different old injuries that I've had with excellent results.
Okay, what are the excellent results?
Really big reductions in chronic inflammation that I've had for a long time in certain difficult areas, and a big reduction in focused acute inflammation that I've developed from small injuries that I've incurred across that time.
Okay, and have you been recommending it to your clients?
I have indeed. A number of my clients have gone out and purchased this device with really, really good feedback. In addition, a number of the RCA staff members have used this device on old injuries that they've had, also with excellent feedback.
Okay, so where can people buy this device?
Have a look in the link below. We've got an affiliate link down there to purchase the Prungo. It's a really, really good device. I highly recommend it. Now back to the video. So we can see when Eamon walks that his right foot lands in very slight internal rotation. It's actually turned inward slightly, and his left foot is very slightly externally rotated. In addition, it's very hard to see this from the footage, but he does skew his pelvis round forward on the left, so round to the right when he's walking. And what this is it's a compensation mechanism. If you didn't skew your pelvis around to the right, your feet would sit very asymmetrically when you walk. But because you turn a little bit round to the right, it skews the angles back towards being more similar to each other, and therefore it doesn't show up much when you're actually walking. So you're compensating really well through your pelvis for the asymmetry that's in your hip joints. Very hard to spot.
Okay.
So I've got some pretty good ideas about what's causing Eamon his problem. Let's have a look at him pedal a bike and see what's happening. We've got an interesting one here again for you guys. Another left-sided hip drop. Now I think it might have been Nicole actually that we filmed, who you sort of vaguely know from Sydney.
Been on a few rides with her.
Been on a few rides with Nicole. I bet she likes sitting behind you in the bunch, mate, and vice versa, not so much. She is like yay tall. So Eamon's got a left-sided hip drop. So when he sits on the bike, his pelvis is skewed around to the right. Now this is pretty familiar because that's exactly the same way that you walk. So when you walk, you turn your pelvis to the right to avoid your foot angles from being highly asymmetrical due to what we identified in your hip joints being skewed, right? So your compensation pattern off the bike is a mirror image of what we see on the bike, and that's pretty common. You'll see people compensating with different three-dimensional strategies to get around asymmetries like this, and you're a classic example. Your body, or your central nervous system rather, has chosen a very, very long time ago not to let your left foot just turn out a lot when you're walking, which is what it would otherwise do. But if you just turn your pelvis around to the right, it just squares up the angle of the feet. So when you look down at them, they don't look that different. And that's exactly what he's doing on the bike. You can see evidence of this in Eamon's position. So he drops his left hip on each downstroke, forward and down. I've put some little markers on the back of his pelvis to show you guys. And he also sits twisted forward on the left as viewed from above. So he's got an obliquity as well as a hip drop. And what that's doing is it's pulling his left knee in closer to the frame, and his right knee therefore stands off the frame more. So he's skewed over to the right, and this is what's causing your saddle sores. Now, we've got one theory about what's causing this, so we better hope that it's this. But what we are suspicious of is that Eamon's two sockets in his pelvis are orientated in different three-dimensional positions, and or that his neck of his femur is orientated on a different angle, one side versus the other. We call it a retroversion angle. And so if this is the case, what will happen here is we will move Eamon's left foot further away from the bike. We will then turn the cleat to allow his left foot to sit in external rotation. We will then push the cleat forward because as his foot turns like this, the ball of his foot is going to move forwards towards the front of the bike. So it's going to artificially stagger his his cleat position. So we're going to move that cleat forward 3-4 millimeters. We're going to stagger them sideways. So we're going to have your left foot further away from the bike.
Yep.
And what we're going to try and do is accommodate the retroverted femoral neck on the left. And we're going to see what happens. So let's see if this works, mate. Come and pull up a chair. So this one here, we're going to basically center it and we're going to leave it like that. So the left cleat is further forward and your foot is further away. Now we're also then going to add 2 pedal washers to the left-hand side pedal to give it another 2 millimeters. And this should stagger the cleats by around 5 millimeters sideways. Let's see if it works. Guys, industry gripe number 1,000,002, whatever we're up to now, we want to always check, whenever you get a bike built, always check that the Q factor is symmetrical. Now, crankface offsets, different amounts of thread insertion into the crank for the pedals, different washers that your mechanic may have had to put on one side versus the other to get the chain line right. All of this sort of stuff can make it sufficiently asymmetrical in the bottom bracket that one of your feet may be further away from the bike than the other one. So the easy way to test this is to rotate your cranks backwards. Hopefully your wheel is fairly centered in the frame. Now, most of them are pretty good these days. So if you measure from the center of a wheel, which is here, out to the center of a pedal, and probably the easiest thing to measure to is the middle of this little bolt here at the back, or the middle of the little disengagement screw adjuster here. If we measure from the center of the wheel out to that point, pretty much every road bike should measure, with a standard Q factor pedal, should measure about 126 to 128 millimeters. And this one's coming out at 128 on the right. And what we then want to do is measure the other side as well and make sure they're pretty close. They need to be realistically within 1 millimeter of each other to have no issues with this. If they're more than 1 or 2 millimeters off, you should find a way to solve that problem so that your feet are at least equidistant from the bike. So this one's measuring 129, so they're 1 millimeter off, and that is because I just put 2 pedal washers underneath the left-hand side pedal of Eamon's bike here. So these, if the 2 pedal washers setup was exactly the same, they'd be within 1 millimeter of each other, which is all good. Check your bike, because some of these I've seen from the factory with where they've had to machine the face of where the bearing pulls in, or the way that the cups thread into the thing or whatever. Some of them can end up like 3 or 4 millimeters different, and it can be a big source of trouble. Close, but not quite enough. Does it feel different, Eamon?
It doesn't really, to be honest.
You're not that sensitive to it? Good. It's like half better.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like 50% improved. Now, there's a couple of reasons why it might only be 50% better. One is that you've got this tremendously ingrained old pattern that you've been riding with for 15 years, and your nervous system is going to take a bit of time to come out of it. The second more likely thing is that we need more stagger. We can see, as viewed from the front, your left heel has started to come in a little bit and your right foot is sitting square on the pedal, but it hasn't gone as far as I would expect. I'm expecting to see probably a 5-degree rotational difference. At the moment, we've got like 2 degrees, maybe 3 degrees. So you look better, but not perfect. Yeah, this is a step in the right direction though. It's much better from above, but not completely gone. The next iteration is to basically temporarily increase the stagger in the Q factor. So we're going to go another 3 millimeters wider. Now this is not something you would want to do for very long, people watching at home. We're going to put 5 pedal washers underneath Eamon's left pedal. This is probably not very safe for on-road riding. Luckily, we're in a controlled environment with professionals here. I don't know who they are, but there are some professionals involved in this. So we're going to do this temporarily. So he's got about 12 millimeters of thread on this Favero pedal. We're going to have 7 millimeters in the crank, so don't do any maximal effort sprints while you've got this on, mate. Preferably. This might end up in tears. So this is okay to do very temporarily as a test, but you wouldn't want to ride around like this for very long. Does that feel different?
I think it feels a little more balanced in some way.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, you just need a lot of stagger. So what we've just learned there is that Eamon looks better the further away we space his left foot and the more we allow his left heel to drift in towards the bike. So what I'm going to do here is throw on a test SQ Labs pedal with an 8mm longer axle only on the left side, and we're going to use a standard spindle pedal on the right hand side, and we're going to go even further and just see how much better he looks. Hooray, you are square to the bike. Yeah, the center of your sacrum is just still hanging left the tiniest bit, but it looks almost good. This is the sort of level of symmetry where, you know, if this is as good as you get, it'll probably be good enough that you won't have any more symptoms.
Yep.
But we're going to try and get it even better than this. All right. Next move, leg length shim, and we're going to raise the seat. Come and have a rest and cool down for a bit, man. So we've got a situation now with Eamon where with the 8mm longer spindle pedal on the left foot only and a little bit of cleat stagger in fore and aft, he's actually looking fairly good. He's not perfectly symmetrical, but he's pretty good. His knees are more or less equidistant from the midline of the bike and his pelvis looks much less twisted. So we're on the right track here. It just requires a lot more movement than we were hoping. We're going to have to use an aftermarket pedal on one side only. It's a bit of a special case. As he's squared up to the bike, it's become more and more obvious that it looks like he's got a slight leg length difference as well. So we're going to use a temporary 3mm EVA lift underneath his right insole to just change the length of his right leg in a very quick and easy manner. I've raised the seat about 4mm because from the left it actually looks slightly too low now. From the right it looks about right. So now that your pelvis is actually fairly square to the bike, it's a bit easier to see if there's a small leg length difference. And 3mm or so of leg length difference for a guy as tall as you, that could easily be accounted for in measurement error. Like when I look at you off the bike and I say you look like you've got no difference, there's always measurement error. Now I'm pretty good at it. I've been doing it for a long time, but my measurement error is still about 3mm or so on either side for most people. So yeah, it's you wait until the person's on the bike, you wait till their pelvis is square, and then you can see the leg length discrepancies a lot more accurately. And that's where we're at now.
Great.
Let's try it. The other giveaway that we still had a problem was your right glute, where this big trigger point is. It was much more active than the left one.
Right.
Now they feel pretty much the same. That's a good sign.
Nice.
So this is one of the very few circumstances where you actually want an asymmetrical foot plant on the bike. You can see Eamon's left heel here is pulling in towards the bike. And there's a logical reason for this. We know that he's got these two asymmetrical hip joints. So it makes sense that if we're going to keep his knees and his hips operating symmetrically relative to the midline of the bike, we are going to have asymmetrical foot skew with his left heel sitting heel in. So he looks worse at the foot. If you just look at his foot from the front, he actually looks less symmetrical than when we started. But everywhere else, he looks better. And this is how he should operate. With his pelvis square to the bike and not dropping one hip, his feet should be skewed like this. So it's a bit of an interesting case and quite a complicated one, Eamon.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not surprised he's had a bit of trouble figuring this one out. Yeah, that shim still needs to be bigger. Come and rest. Let's increase the shim up to 4mm first before we make a judgment call on that one. Could just be that we're making the wrong move in the wrong order. I'm going to add in a proper leg length compensation shim here underneath this cleat. And we're going to increase it a little bit up to 4mm. You still look like you're overextending this right leg. Now, this is getting, if this is something that we leave in place today, this may well be temporary.
Okay.
Because what I'm anticipating here is that your right hamstring, because you've been sitting twisted to the bike for so long, your right hamstring is not functioning super well. So it's not controlling the bottom of the stroke as easily or as smoothly as the left one. And so this may be what you would think of as a functional leg length difference.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would be very surprised if your right leg was 4mm shorter than your left.
Yep.
It could be 2 or 3, but 4 or even 5mm is much more than I would expect given how you look off the bike.
Yep.
So the much more likely scenario is that this is a functional leg length difference, and therefore we might want to leave the shims in for a month. 2 months, something like that, even a week, you know, just to let your hamstring come back online. Once your pelvis is more square and all of your muscle system evens out, we can then remove the shims down the line. So this could be a temporary move, but yeah, we'll see. Now we'll try staggering the cleat again. That looks definitely better from the right. Your leg extension is much more controlled.
Yep.
It looks better from the behind as well. Let's see if we now need to stagger this. Okay, so we'll just go forward again by about 3mm or so, maybe 4. Just see if we can get it any better than this. Super good though. So if you've been walking around with this slight skew in your pelvis for a long time, your left foot will have been sort of loaded diagonally. A lot of the line of force is going across that foot because it's turned out a little bit relative to the right one. And what that can do is just make the rear half of your foot slightly less dynamically stable over time. The ligaments loosen out a little bit, the joint space gets a little bit wider. And so sometimes you need a tiny bit of more stabilization under the heel. This is like the last pieces of the puzzle. Nope, it's no different. Okay. Okay, no significant change. Right, let's try one other thing here before we go down the path of changing the insole. So we're going to increase the stagger in the cleat position. 3 or 4 millimeters up to maybe 5, 6. This is more than I would have anticipated, but you never know. Everyone's different with how much they need for this. That was unexpected. Look at your left foot, it's squared up on the pedal. It's not as heel in as it was before.
Yeah.
That's unexpected. I wasn't expecting that at all. It does look better from above. Same question, Eamon. Does that actually feel slightly better with the cleat even further forward like that?
I think it does, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. So,
Yep.
we underdid the stagger after all of that. We just didn't have it far enough. That is not bad, man. There's still just a hint of the left-sided hip drop, but it's almost completely gone. Not bad at all. So one possibility here is that the reason that you need the shim under your right foot is because you also need the cleat staggered a lot. It does have an unwanted side effect of changing the actual structural length of your leg. If we think about the distance from your hip down to the center of the pedal as being the length of your leg, staggering the cleats, the unwanted side effect of that is that it makes your left leg longer. So potentially you require the 4 millimeter shim under your right foot, not because your legs are actually different lengths, but because your leg when you're on a bike is technically a different length. So it'll remain to be seen whether the shim needs to stay there. You might have a bit of mucking around at home to do as you adapt to this, to consider removing the shim underneath the right foot slowly. Or it might just stay like this forever. Yeah. The next time you're up here, we'll have another look. But you can then go home with something to tinker with. If it feels quite good initially, then it slowly starts filling off again. The first thing we do is remove a little bit of the shim from the right side because we'll consider it an adaptation process. Yeah. I don't know whether it'll happen, but it would be logical that would happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay.
Just for a minute, crank the load up a bit. Go up a couple of cogs and put a bit of pressure on. Oh yeah, it looks fine under load. Actually almost looks better. Oh yeah, it's basically perfect when the load goes up. That's interesting. That means we've got leftover neurological patterning, and when we ask your nervous system to go hard, your symmetry actually improves, which means that we're already in the right spot. We've just got leftover muscular and neurological patterning going on. But yes, Eamon going hard looks really good.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a very good sign that we've done the right thing. And remembering that you'll have all of this asymmetrical muscle strength, all of this neurological patterning from being like this for so long. One of the great signs that you've done all the right things is when you're riding at 100 watts and you look a little bit asymmetrical, and then you bring it up to 400 for a minute and you look way more even. That means you're in the right spot. Yeah. Nice. And so what you can look forward to is as your symmetry gets better and better functionally in the next couple of months, your low load symmetry will come good as well. As well as your high load. But at the moment it looks really good. It's funny, you have actually ended up almost with your right heel out and the left foot in just like a tiny bit. Instead of it being square and very in, we've got turned in and slightly in, which is very, very akin to the way that you walk. And that's a really good sign that this is probably how your pelvis wants to be. Yeah. Let me take the wedges back out from your heel, Amy. I just want to make sure they're not actually doing anything. I don't think they are. I'd rather you not have too much superfluous junk there. Yeah, it's absolutely no different with or without the wedges, so we won't bother. All the trickery is in the cleat position, the shim,
Yep.
and the offset Q factor. Looking good, man. The rest of your position, I have absolutely no gripes with.
Okay, great.
The seat setback, the height, now that we've got it at the right height, we've moved
Yep.
it up 4 millimeters.
Yep.
The reach and the drop, no issue.
Yep.
The one thing you could probably do is lower the bars slightly. They're
okay.
a little bit on the high side, but if you're after more of a comfortable endurance position,
Yep.
where it is at the moment is totally fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. And the reach looks really good.
Okay.
You know, at moderate load, with this big gentle bend in the elbows,
Yep.
nice relaxed shoulder posture. Yeah, it's good, man. Your general position,
Great.
no significant issues there whatsoever. Even the bar width, you could probably go one size narrower if you really wanted.
Yeah, these came with quite wide bars, and I went, these I think are 41 maybe at the
Yeah.
hoods, but then angled in it's a little bit narrower,
Yep.
but
It's good.
feels good.
Something around 40 centimeters at
Yep.
the hoods would be about right for
Yep.
you. Yeah. Looks good, man. Okay, guys, we have finished Eamon's position up, and what a bizarre one it was, mate. What did you get out of that situation? Do you remember much about what I told you? It's pretty complicated.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on with asymmetry in the hips.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite a lot of changes.
Yeah, his position was basically almost perfect to start with. We've pulled his seat up 4 millimeters, but where it was lacking was all of the complicated asymmetry. So I won't explain it all again, but what we've ended up doing here is we've staggered Eamon's left foot away from the bike by 8 millimeters to suit his asymmetrical hip, and therefore he has ended up with one SQ Lab plus 8 millimeter 512 race pedal on the left hand side, and then a standard Favero Asioma pedal on the right. And we've also staggered his cleats fore and aft, and we've got a 4 millimeter shim underneath his right foot. So it's quite a complicated setup. He looks pretty good like this. He's under heavy load when we engage him to do 300, 350 watts. His symmetry goes really, really, really good, and that's a great sign.
Yep.
Hopefully what that last bit of sort of slight left hip drop that we've got under very light load is therefore just a neurological patterning left over. And you can look forward to your muscle symmetry getting better and better as this comes out of you.
Yep.
You've got a lot of chronic low grade asymmetry in your muscle system, and that should get better with time. So yeah, he looks pretty good. This was a very complicated one, and hopefully a lot of the explanations that I've given you at the start of this video make sense to you guys out there. And this one will be a bit of a work in progress. I've given Eamon a little bit of stuff to look out for with the shim underneath the right foot at home, maybe needing to be reduced in time.
Yep.
And next time you're up this way with your family on holiday, mate,
Yep.
duck back in, because I'd love to see how you've ended up and where you've ended up with all of this. But for now, good luck.
Excellent. Thanks, Neil.
Thanks for coming all this way. We'll see you guys in the next video.